Most mornings in Ashbury Heights begin the same way, quiet, manicured, and deceptively perfect. I've been a patrol sergeant here for 11 years, serving a suburb tucked just outside Chicago. From above, the neighborhood looks like a brochure for stability. Symmetrical brick homes, trimmed hedges cut with mathematical precision, and American flags mounted at identical angles. Even the mailboxes match. It's the kind of place where people wave from their driveways but still lock their car doors out of habit. For me, life here has always followed a steady rhythm. I wake before sunrise, lace up my boots while the coffee brews, and kiss my wife Elena goodbye as she packs lunches for our daughter, Sophia. By 6:30 a.m., I'm pulling into the Ashbury Heights Police Department lot, greeting officers finishing night shift, and grabbing a cup of coffee strong enough to double as paint thinner. Our calls are usually minor: noise complaints, parking disputes, teenagers testing curfew boundaries. It's not a high-crime area. That's part of its charm, and part of its illusion. Ashbury Heights is mostly white, about 70% by last census count. The remaining 30% is a mix of Hispanic families like mine, a growing black middle-class population, and a few Asian and Middle Eastern households who moved here in the last decade for the schools. On the surface, everyone gets along. Underneath, things are more complicated. I'm Mexican-American, born and raised on the South Side. My father worked construction for 30 years and still calls me Mijo, even when I'm in uniform. I earned my badge the long way: academy, night shifts, years of patrol before promotion. In this town, my presence means different things to different people. To some, I'm proof the department is diverse. To others, I'm a reminder that the town they remember is changing. Most residents treat me with respect. A few treat me with politeness, so tight it feels rehearsed. And then there's a small group who watch me like I'm a guest overstaying my welcome. I've learned to recognize the difference between friendliness and tolerance. The first sign that something was off came on a Tuesday afternoon in late August. The air was thick, cicadas humming in the maple trees along Brentwood Avenue. I had parked my marked squad car, Unit 14, near Bellamy Park to finish paperwork after a routine call about a loose dog. The park is central to the community. Soccer practices, birthday parties, retirees walking laps around the paved trail. It's also within the boundaries of the Brentwood Homeowners Association, the most organized, well-funded HOA in the suburb. As I sat in the driver's seat typing notes into the onboard computer, I noticed a woman standing on the sidewalk about 20 feet away. Perfect posture, white linen blouse, large sunglasses despite the shade from the trees. Karen Whitmore, HOA president. She wasn't subtle about watching me. After a moment, she crossed the street, heels clicking against the pavement like punctuation marks. "Sergeant," she said, smiling without warmth. "Is there a reason your vehicle is parked here?" "I'm finishing a report, ma'am." She glanced at the squad car, as if it were leaking oil onto her lawn. "This area is designated residential aesthetic space." I blinked. It's a public road. It falls within HOA oversight. With respect, HOA guidelines don't supersede city property. Her smile thinned. Behind her, a black father pushing a stroller slowed slightly, listening. Across the street, an older white couple paused their gardening, pretending not to eavesdrop. Karen lowered her voice just enough to feel conspiratorial. "We've had concerns about increased patrol presence near the park. It makes families uncomfortable." "Increased patrol?" I asked evenly. "We respond to calls where they happen." She tilted her head. "Of course. We just want to maintain the community's image." Image. That word lingered. I followed her gaze, not at the park, not at the houses. At me. I kept my tone professional. "I'll be here about 10 more minutes." Her jaw tightened. "I'll be contacting your department." "You're welcome to." She turned and walked away, posture rigid. It wasn't the first complaint I'd received from the HOA. Over the past few months, there had been emails about patrol cars being parked too visibly, about officers lingering in high-traffic areas. Strangely, those complaints seemed to spike when I was assigned to that sector. My white colleagues didn't receive the same volume. Could I prove anything? No, but patterns tell stories. Later that week, my chief, Harold Bennett, a 30-year veteran with a reputation for fairness, called me into his office. He slid a folder across the desk. HOA correspondence. Highlighted phrases jumped out. Excessive presence. Intimidating visibility. Disruptive optics. You doing anything outside policy? He asked. No, sir. He studied me for a long moment, then nodded. Keep your reports clean. Let me handle the politics. Politics. That's what this was becoming. Over the next several days, I noticed subtle shifts. Residents who once waved now offered tight nods. A mother, gathering her kids from the playground, watched me longer than necessary. A man mowing his lawn turned off the engine as I drove past, staring until I was out of sight. Nothing overt, nothing actionable, just tension building like humidity before a storm. The disturbance seemed small. An HOA president upset about a park patrol car. Petty even, but I've worked long enough to know that small power struggles can grow teeth. Ashbury Heights looked calm. Lawns trimmed, streets spotless, community newsletter full of bake sales and charity runs. Yet beneath that polished surface, something was shifting, and I had the uneasy feeling that Karen Whitmore wasn't done trying to prove a point. At the time, I didn't know how far she'd go to make it, but I would soon. If you'd asked me a month earlier what I liked most about Ashbury Heights, I would have said the predictability. Morning patrol meant school zone crossings and coffee refills at Delgado's Market. Afternoon patrol meant checking in on the elderly residents near Bellamy Park. Evenings were usually quiet enough that I could finish paperwork before shift end instead of staying late. Predictability keeps a town calm. It also makes disruptions stand out. After Karen Whitmore's first complaint about my squad car being aesthetic interference, things didn't explode overnight. They shifted quietly, deliberately. I started noticing the emails, not to me directly, but to the department's public account. Complaints about over-policing near residential green zones. Concerns that the department was targeting certain blocks disproportionately. Those blocks happened to include Brentwood Avenue, the most expensive stretch of homes in Ashbury Heights. The irony? Crime data showed more petty theft near the shopping strip 2 miles east. But Brentwood bordered the park, and visibility, there was everything. Visibility and perception. One afternoon, I was parked under the shade of a sycamore near Bellamy Park, finishing a report on a minor fender bender. Kids were running drills on the soccer field. A group of older white residents practiced walking laps, gossip traveling faster than their footsteps. Across the playground, a black mother sat on a bench, scrolling her phone while keeping one eye on her toddler. It was the kind of scene you'd frame for a real estate ad. Then my radio crackled. Unit 14, citizen complaint logged regarding vehicle placement on Brentwood. Again, I didn't need dispatch to tell me who. Karen had started calling every time my cruiser was visible from her street. The pattern was almost impressive. 10 minutes parked? Complaint. Lights flashing during a traffic stop? Complaint. Engine idling while I completed paperwork? Complaint. Each report was small, technically harmless, but volume creates narrative. Narrative creates pressure. That evening, I attended a community meet and greet at the Ashbury Heights Civic Center. Events like that were meant to build trust, coffee, cookies, officers answering questions about safety programs. I stood near the refreshments table when Karen approached with 2 other HOA board members flanking her like silent endorsements. Sergeant Ruiz, she said, voice polished for public consumption. We appreciate your service. There was again that careful phrasing. Thank you, ma'am. She gestured lightly toward the park visible through the large windows. Some residents have expressed discomfort with how frequently patrol vehicles occupy that space. I respond where calls come in. Of course, she replied smoothly. But perception matters. Behind her, I caught the eye of Mr. Thompson, a retired Black Army veteran who lived on the edge of Brentwood. He gave me a small nod, supportive, steady. Perception matters. I'd heard that phrase before in different forms. When I first joined the department, a former resident once asked if I was from around here. Another had mistaken me for maintenance staff despite the uniform. Nothing blatant enough to file a complaint, just enough to remind me that authority can look unfamiliar to some people. I assure you, I said evenly, patrol placement is based on data and calls for service. Karen's smile, didn't reach her eyes. Data can be interpreted in many ways. It wasn't a threat. Not exactly. But it wasn't harmless either. Over the next week, something subtle shifted in the neighborhood dynamic. When I drove through Brentwood, conversations paused mid-sentence. A few residents filmed my cruiser on their phones as I passed. One afternoon, a teenage boy saluted dramatically while his father quickly lowered his hand. Then came the HOA newsletter. A printed copy found its way onto the department's front desk. In a section labeled Community Concerns, there was a paragraph about maintaining the tranquil character of Brentwood and ensuring that municipal vehicles respect residential harmony. No names mentioned, no accusations, but anyone who lived there knew. The chief called me in again after that. He leaned back in his chair, reading glasses perched low on his nose. "You're following protocol?" "Yes, sir." "You've logged every stop, every call?" "Yes, sir." He sighed. "I don't like politics bleeding into patrol." "Neither do I." He studied me carefully. "You feel this is personal?" I chose my words carefully. "I think some people aren't comfortable with visibility." "Visibility of what?" I held his gaze. He understood. He nodded once. "Keep your head down. Document everything." That phrase stuck with me. Document everything. Because small disturbances rarely stay small. The real foreshadowing came on a humid Friday afternoon. I responded to a report of a suspicious vehicle near Brentwood. Ironic, given the complaints about patrol presence. I parked legally along the curb, lights off, and walked the perimeter. As I circled back, I noticed Karen standing on her porch, phone raised, recording. Not unusual anymore. But this time, she wasn't alone. Beside her stood a tow truck idling at the corner, yellow lights blinking lazily in the heat. The driver remained inside, engine running. I felt a ripple of unease. Maybe it was coincidence. Maybe the truck was there for someone else. Still, the image lingered in my mind long after I cleared the call. Because when tension builds quietly, escalation doesn't announce itself with sirens. It waits. And in Ashbury Heights, a place obsessed with control, appearance, and hierarchy, I had the distinct feeling someone was preparing to make a statement. At the time, it still seemed like a petty power struggle. An HOA president irritated by a patrol car. But power, when challenged, doesn't usually retreat. It doubles down. And I was beginning to suspect that Karen Whitmore wasn't just filing complaints anymore. She was planning something bigger. Sundays were my reset button. No uniform. No radio clipped to my shoulder. Just jeans, a worn Cubs cap, and the smell of charcoal drifting across our small backyard. Our house sat on the eastern edge of Ashbury Heights. Smaller lots, older builds, more diverse families. Here, lawns weren't measured with rulers, and nobody filed complaints about mailbox shades. Elena watered her rose bushes while Sophia chased Bubbles along the fence line with the neighbor's twins. Across the alley, Mrs. Nguyen hung laundry on a line despite owning a perfectly good dryer. Mr. Thompson, retired Army, steady presence, walked his German shepherd and waved. This side of town felt human. It also felt watched lately. The Brentwood complaints hadn't stopped. If anything, they'd grown more strategic. Instead of dramatic confrontations, Karen Whitmore shifted tactics. The HOA began submitting formal requests for municipal compliance reviews. Polite language. Official letterhead. The kind of paperwork that forces city administrators to respond, even when there's nothing to fix. On Monday morning, I arrived at the station to find a printed memo in my inbox. The city manager had asked for clarification regarding patrol deployment in high-visibility residential corridors. High visibility, a phrase carefully chosen. The chief called me in before lunch. His office overlooked the parking lot where patrol cars sat in neat rows, black and white, paint gleaming in the sun. "You're still logging everything?" he asked. "Yes, sir." "Body cam active during park stops?" "Always." He tapped the memo against his desk. "They're escalating through city channels now." I knew who they meant. I'm within policy. I know. He paused. But optics matter to council members. There was that word again. Optics. Not safety. Not response times. Optics. That afternoon, I returned to Brentwood for routine patrol. The sky hung heavy with late summer humidity, cicadas buzzing like distant power lines. Kids were out front, riding bikes in careful loops along the sidewalk. Sprinklers arced over lawns trimmed to identical heights. I parked legally near Bellamy Park to monitor dismissal from a nearby tutoring program. Within minutes, I felt it, the shift in atmosphere. A woman gathered her children more quickly than necessary. Two men standing by a driveway lowered their voices as I passed. Karen stood across the street, near her SUV, phone already in hand. She didn't approach this time. She observed, filmed, waited. The tow truck from a few days earlier rolled slowly down the block, engine rumbling low. It didn't stop, just drove past. But the driver glanced toward my cruiser longer than coincidence required. I made a mental note of the company logo printed on the door. Small disturbances. Foreshadowing rarely announces itself loudly. It whispers. Later that week, the HOA hosted a community preservation forum at the Brentwood Clubhouse. I attended in uniform at the chief's request. Community engagement, he'd called it. Inside, the clubhouse smelled of lemon polish and fresh carpet. Framed photos of neighborhood block parties lined the walls. Almost exclusively white faces in matching holiday sweaters. I stood near the back as Karen addressed the room. "We value safety," she said smoothly, hands clasped at her waist. "But we also value the character of our community. Excessive patrol presence can create tension where none exists." Murmurs of agreement followed. From the side of the room, Mr. Thompson raised a hand. "Respectfully," he said, voice calm but firm, "I feel safer seeing patrol near the park." A few heads turned. Karen smiled tightly. "Of course, Harold. We're simply asking for balance." Balance. The word hung heavy. After the meeting, a younger Hispanic couple approached me quietly. "We appreciate you being around," the husband said. "Our kids play there every day." "Thank you," I replied. Their gratitude was soft, almost cautious, like support offered in a room where it wasn't universally welcomed. Driving home that night, I couldn't shake the feeling that lines were being drawn without anyone saying it outright. On one side, preserving character. On the other, families who didn't fit the original brochure image of Ashbury Heights. The next morning brought the smallest disturbance yet. A bright orange HOA notice taped to the signpost near Bellamy Park. "Unauthorized municipal vehicle parking subject to enforcement review." I stared at it for a long moment. Municipal vehicle. They meant me. Technically, they had no authority over city patrol placement. Everyone knew that, but the wording was deliberate. It created doubt. It suggested consequence. I documented the sign with my phone and forwarded it to the chief. His reply was brief. "Stand by." That afternoon, while responding to a minor noise complaint, I parked Unit 14 in the same stretch of curb I'd used 100 times before. Legally, within city jurisdiction. Lights off. Engine idling. The park buzzed with normal life. Kids laughing, dogs barking, a lawnmower humming in the distance. And yet the air felt charged. Across the street, Karen stood on her porch again. Phone raised. Tow truck idling at the corner. Closer this time. The driver stepped out, pretending to check something near the rear axle. Our eyes met. He looked uncertain. I felt a slow, steady pulse in my throat. Not fear, not anger. Recognition. Whatever Karen believed she could control, she was about to test the limits of it. Small disturbances had turned into coordinated moves. Letters, meetings, notices, surveillance. Each step still deniable, still within rights. But the pattern was clear. This wasn't about a parking spot. It was about authority, about who gets to define the image of a neighborhood, and about who, in Karen Whitmore's view, looked like they belonged in a marked patrol car parked in front of Brentwood homes. As I stepped out of Unit 14 to handle the noise complaint, I couldn't ignore the sense that the calm surface of Ashbury Heights was finally cracking. The tow truck's engine continued to idle behind me, waiting, and for the first time, I wondered if someone was bold enough to cross from nuisance into crime, just to prove a point. By the time autumn touched Ashbury Heights, the maple trees along Brentwood Avenue had started to turn, deep reds, burnt orange, gold so bright it almost looked artificial. The neighborhood leaned into the season the way it leaned into everything else. Perfectly arranged porch pumpkins, coordinated wreaths, chalkboard signs announcing harvest blessings. From a distance, it looked peaceful. Up close, it felt divided. My routine hadn't changed. Morning roll call, patrol assignments, coffee that tasted like regret. I still kissed Elena goodbye before dawn. Still helped Sophia with spelling words at night. Still grilled on Sundays in the backyard while Mr. Thompson waved from across the alley. But something had shifted in the air of Brentwood. People were watching more openly now. Where conversations used to pause subtly as I drove past, now they stopped entirely. A few residents didn't bother pretending not to record. Phones came out the moment my cruiser appeared near the park. It wasn't illegal. It wasn't even confrontational, but it was coordinated. The HOA had stopped sending complaint emails. Instead, they'd moved to formal letters through legal counsel, carefully worded documents questioning resource allocation priorities and community comfort metrics. Metrics, as if public safety could be measured in property values. The chief remained steady. "You're clean," he told me one morning, tapping a stack of printed reports. "Everything's documented. Let them talk." So I kept doing my job. On a cool Thursday afternoon, I parked Unit 14 along Brentwood again, legally positioned between a fire hydrant and a driveway with more than enough clearance. I was responding to a minor vandalism report. Someone had knocked over decorative lanterns near the walking trail. Kids from multiple neighborhoods used that park. Black, white, Hispanic, Asian. It was one of the few spaces in Ashbury Heights that felt naturally integrated. As I stepped out of the cruiser, I saw Karen Whitmore across the street. No sunglasses this time, just a fixed expression and her phone already recording. Behind her, the now familiar tow truck sat idling at the corner. The driver didn't even pretend anymore. He stood outside the cab, hands in pockets, glancing between Karen and my vehicle like he was waiting for a signal. I felt the weight of it immediately. This wasn't random. It wasn't coincidence. It was choreography. I handled the vandalism report quickly, speaking with two teenage boys who admitted to roughhousing but denied damaging anything intentionally. I documented the scene, reassured a nearby parent, and returned toward my cruiser. The tow truck's engine roared to life. I stopped mid-step. The driver climbed into his cab. Karen remained on her porch, phone steady. For a brief moment, I wondered if this was another intimidation tactic, another attempt to rattle me into moving the vehicle voluntarily. Then the tow truck turned sharply and pulled up directly behind Unit 14. Hazard lights flashing, steel arms lowering. I walked forward calmly, heart steady despite the absurdity unfolding in front of me. "Can I help you?" I asked the driver. He avoided eye contact. "Received authorization to tow unauthorized vehicle. This is a marked police unit." He hesitated. "Ma'am said it's in violation of HOA regulation." I almost laughed. HOA regulations don't supersede municipal law. Karen stepped off her porch, approaching with deliberate slowness. "You've been warned repeatedly," she said, projecting her voice like she was addressing a crowd. "This is private residential oversight territory." "It's a public street," I replied evenly. "It affects our property values." Behind curtains and front windows, silhouettes gathered. Neighbors watching. Some curious, some uneasy. Mr. Thompson emerged from his house farther down the block, expression darkening as he realized what was happening. "Karen," he called out, "you can't tow a squad car." She ignored him. The tow operator shifted uncomfortably. "Ma'am, I need written authorization from the city." "You have it," she insisted, waving a clipboard. I extended my hand. "Let me see that." She hesitated a fraction too long. It wasn't city authorization. It was an HOA directive. Letterhead, signatures, bold font. Meaningless in this context. "You're making a mistake," I told the driver quietly. He swallowed. And then, incredibly, he proceeded. The hydraulic lift engaged with a metallic groan. Steel arms slid beneath the rear tires of Unit 14. For a split second, I considered physically stopping him, but training overrides emotion. I stepped back, hand moving calmly to my shoulder mic. "Dispatch," I said evenly, eyes never leaving the scene. "Be advised, marked Unit 14 is being unlawfully towed from Brentwood and Maple. Request supervisor and additional units." Silence. Then, copy, Unit 14. Clarify, unlawfully towed. Affirmative. Karen's expression flickered, just briefly, as the word hung in the air. Unlawfully. The tow truck lifted my cruiser's rear wheels off the pavement. Neighbors gasped audibly. Mr. Thompson muttered something under his breath that didn't sound polite. Karen kept filming. Document everything, she said loudly, as if narrating her own justification. Within minutes, sirens echoed from 2 directions. My chief's unmarked SUV arrived first, gravel crunching under tires as he pulled up sharply. He stepped out slowly, surveying the scene. Tow truck, suspended squad car, HOA, president holding a clipboard like a shield. What in God's name is this? He asked. Karen straightened. We are enforcing community standards. The chief looked at me. I nodded once. He turned back to her, voice turning cold in a way I'd only heard twice before. You authorized the seizure of a marked, on-duty police vehicle. It was improperly placed. That, he said evenly, is not within your authority. The second patrol unit arrived, lights flashing. A small crowd had gathered now. Residents from both sides of the neighborhood divide. Some whispering support, some watching silently. The chief faced the tow driver. Lower the vehicle. Now. The driver complied instantly. As Unit 14's tires touched pavement again, the reality settled over the block. This wasn't an HOA dispute anymore. This was criminal interference with government property. Karen's confidence wavered for the first time. You can't intimidate residents for protecting their neighborhood, she said, voice thinner now. The chief's reply was calm and devastating. Ma'am, you just committed a felony. The word hit harder than any siren. Felony. Around us, the autumn leaves rustled in a crisp breeze, pumpkins unmoving on pristine porches. Ashbury Heights still looked perfect, but the illusion had shattered. And for the first time since this started, Karen Whitmore looked like she understood that her small disturbance, her obsession with optics and control, had grown into something far bigger than a park patrol car. It had become Grand Theft Auto, and this time, the neighborhood was watching her.